The Gospel of Gold by G.S. Lewis. Chapter 37. Doppelganger. For a short while after, the only noise to fill the silence was the rain's perpetual patter. Gold and Chuck's wife watched him stare silently at his doorstep, with only a guess as to what sorts of thoughts must be churning through his mind. At last, he slid the screen shut again, and slowly made his way to the table. He looked so depressed that Gold felt obligated to say something heartening. "Thank you," he murmured, "for not letting her take me." Chuck looked at him and offered a smile that seemed forced.
"Such a polite boy,"
he said sadly.
"And you're welcome, though I've only delayed her."
"Delayed her from what?" asked his wife in a shell-shocked voice. "Charlie, what kind of person are we even working for anymore?"
"That's where it all went wrong,"
muttered Chuck, pressing a few buttons on the visual phone at the wall.
"When we started working for a person instead of an ideal."
He looked back at Gold with an apologetic expression.
"I'd, like to say I'm sorry for some of the doubts I had while listening to your story. I'm still not convinced of everything, but from all you've said, boy, a lot more starting to make sense than before."
"Not to me," said Gold, trying to ignore an uncomfortable pounding in his head. "The world kept going in the brief time I was away. I have so many questions." "Me too," chimed in the woman next to him. "And you still haven't answered mine, Charlie."
"You were just there for the answer,"
he retorted impatiently, though to his credit, he didn't raise his voice.
"We're working for the kind of person who expects employees to sell out friends and delays medicine to the sick when they don't."
Chuck pressed one more button on the screen.
"Here's who we once stood for."
A video started to play, and Gold immediately recognized the man in the center frame, as well as the bell tower of Ecruteak City set in the background. Still swathed in bandages, the man began to speak, and his voice was strong and charismatic despite his wounded state. The crown of fiery red hair on his head left no room for doubt as to who this warrior king was. "I am Lance, returning Pokemon champion of the Johto region," he began. "Champion, I say, though I have never championed any of the changes our league has made in these last years. You, people of Johto, by way of your patronage, elected to have them. You see what it has wrought." As Lance spoke like this, the footage cut from him and displayed brief scenes of Pokemon gym battles mid-combat. Each was only a second long, each depicting the moment a gym leader's Pokemon delivered a deadly, if not mortal, blow to the challengers. Gold stared, astonished, hardly able to fathom how Lance and Morty had managed to compile so much footage, let alone edit it so quickly. Had it been just them? He winced as an image of a bay leaf lying in a puddle of blood-like chlorophyll winked on and off the display. It looked like Jinichi's. The camera returned to Lance, this time at an angle, so that only the burned tower of Ecruteak showed in the background. "Now here I stand to offer this proposition," Lance announced, raising his arms. "None of you elected me. By league custom, I fought my way to the top with only my small team to support me. But today, I offer everyone the chance to choose me as your champion. That will mean a return to the ways of compassion and upstanding principles, old ways that will be renewed and made law after the disbanding and reformation of the current leadership. The shot changed again, a 45-degree angle in the other direction, so that now Ecruteak's bell tower loomed behind Lance. The tone of his voice shifted to a note of challenge. As to those of you who would see me as a threat to your unbridled freedom, your rule by force, know that your power is already broken. I render all Pokemon gyms and badges of Johto null and void, effective immediately, until the League is renewed. This I do, not only in my own name as the champion, but in the name of Ho-oh, the Phoenix, who has foreseen my victory and declared it settled. At that, the video abruptly ended, just as Gold's mind began to process Lance's last words. What? Spirit took him aside and told him the future? When did this happen? Chuck grunted and reached to press another button.
That came out at about 3 o'clock today,
he said, in a voice quieter than anything Gold had heard from him thus far.
Drove the internet crazy. Then at 6 o'clock, we had this.
A new video began to play, and there was Lance again, center screen. This time, however, there was something off about him. Gold couldn't pin down what it was. The hair, face, and voice were all Lance, but he had changed location and wardrobe. He was wearing the black tights and red cape that Gold had seen him in during their initial encounter at the Lake of Rage. As for where he was, it looked to be a stone floor arena. By the flutter of Lance's cape and a distant shot of treetops below, Gold saw that it was in a high place outdoors. To his right stood an orange, dragon-like Pokemon, about his height, that Gold recognized as a Charizard. It appeared distracted and kept shifting its feet and looking off-screen at something. On Lance's left stood a lofty chair, carved entirely of gray stonework. Gold's eyes widened as he processed what he was seeing. It was the Johto League Champion's throne, the desire of all League trainers. Strange though it was to see Lance suddenly back at the Pokemon League's pinnacle for whatever reason, that wasn't what bothered Gold. It was Lance himself. There was nothing unusual, aside from the sudden lack of bandages, but... I am Lance, the Johto League champion. The imposter spoke. Gold viewed him as such, if for nothing else than the way he spoke. Lance possessed an innate quality of authority, and it carried naturally in his voice. This person sounded more like someone trying to sound authoritative. He wasn't necessarily even failing, but Gold had seen Lance himself, and he knew the difference. I've returned from my training for this year's league competition, the fraud went on. Sooner, mind you, than I would have liked. It seems Team Rocket is back to their old tricks, and they've gotten some attention-seeking diva to work their illusion. Gold's jaw went slack with disbelief as he heard the message. The Johto League was projecting its own dirty strategy onto its enemy. The irony of it was so shameless that he wanted to vomit. The imposter's tone now turned accusatory as he addressed his other. To be frank, though, you dropped the ball a little. What, you couldn't afford to replicate my cape, so you wrapped yourself in toilet paper? Classy. I'll credit you for at least getting my hair right, but it looks out of place in Ecruteak. What have I to do with that city? He motioned at his own surroundings with a sweep of his arm. See, this is where I live. That's my Charizard, and over there's my chair. which you'll notice is also shaped like a Charizard. Dragons are kind of my thing, in case you didn't know. Where are your dragons? As he went on, the video cut briefly to some older footage. In it, Lance, the real Lance, could be seen commanding a Dragonite in battle against a challenger's Feraligatr. Watching, Gold felt a hot swoop of anger. No Dragonite of Lance's would ever have tolerated the presence of this faker, so the propagandist behind the video probably had to make do with the cut. A Charizard, at least by dragon standards, was more common, and Gold suspected that this one was mellow enough to suffer waiting the duration of the fraud's performance. Those cheating scumballs, he thought. They know Lance is without his team, and they're using it to discredit him. Back to you, Team Rocket, continued the false Lance. Props for infiltrating the ace trainers of Blackthorn City and managing to take over the gym. I don't know how you did it. For being such good sports and not hurting anyone, I'm willing to play nice and give you 24 hours to remove yourselves. No harm, no foul. Of course, if you don't, if you continue to stand between honest trainers and their chance at the Rising Badge, then, in the name of the League, I will remove you myself. I must assume that's what your diva meant when he said he was rendering badges useless. But you made a mistake coming after my first home. With a sudden flourish, the faker bowed to the camera. Loyal fans of the Pokemon League, it's been an unusually turbulent past couple of days. But you may rest assured that we will keep to our schedule now that I am back. Good night, and thank you for your patience. The recording ended. Gold realized his hands were shaking, and he gripped the edges of the table to stop them. Chuck turned away from the screen to look back at him.
You can bet there's more going on than that,
the gym leader growled.
Such as your story and Karen's sudden private visit. There's always a bigger picture. But now you know at least as much as the general public.
So, thought Gold, this is what Karen was talking about when mentioning both of Lance's public announcements. The people are going to choose which Lance they believe in tomorrow.